Not too long ago, I posted a video on my channel asking what you thought was the best lift or leveling kit for the 2016 and newer Toyota Tacoma. A link to that video is in the description below, and really what I was hoping to get out of that video was some input from various other Tacoma owners on what the best options were available for lifting the 2016 newer Tacoma. Now, while I really like the Tacoma, I feel like from this angle that when you have the long bed version of the Tacoma, the proportions are off just a little bit to where if you added just a couple inches in height to the vehicle, it would look a lot better. Now, I wanted to do a lift or leveling kit to minimize the decrease in gas mileage, not have a huge impact on ride quality, and hopefully do it at a pretty reasonable cost. And so those are kind of the criteria that I listed in that video. Since I posted that video, I've looked at your comments, I've done a lot of research, really figuring out what I wanted the truck to look like, and made a decision on the direction I wanted to take. In this video, I want to share where I ultimately landed and some of the various options that I saw available during my search. So in doing all of that research, where I really landed is that I wanted to maintain a pretty stock look on the truck. And so I wanted to stick with the stock TRD off-road wheels that we've got here. Eventually I'd like to increase the tire size, but I also wanted to do something where I could stick with these tires for the time being, if possible, and increase them later on. The reason for that is you can see there's quite a bit of tread in here on these tires. I hate the thought of throwing away a perfectly good set of tires for appearances only. And so the plan is to try to lift the truck, keep these stock tires if possible. Obviously we won't know until the lift's been installed how it's going to look with these tires. It may be that we have to increase them sooner than later, but we'll kind of wait and see on that once the kit's installed. So maintaining stock wheels is a priority. What I found is the stock tires, they're 265/70 R16. What I really liked looking through various blogs of other people that kept the stock wheels is that the 265/75 R16 is a really nice look. The 285 is a popular option as well. For me, it's just a little bit too thick, and so the 275 is kind of what I landed on there. And so eventually that would be the plan, is when these tires need to be replaced, increase to that 275. In the meantime, stick with these stock tires. So along with that tire selection, what I really found is adding just a couple inches in height is the way to go. And so where I ended up was I wanted to add 2 to 3 inches in the front and 1 or 2 inches in the back. I felt like that was kind of the best option, maintaining the stock wheels, adding a very subtle lift. And ultimately what I decided is, because of the desire to go with the 275 instead of the 285, I thought a 2-inch lift in the front, 1 inch in the rear would probably look better than 3 inches and 1 or 2 in the rear. That would probably be a better setup if you were going to go with an aftermarket wheel and tire that was larger, or if you were going to go with the 285s. And so we decided to stick with the 2-inch in the front, 1 inch in the rear. So what I found is there's basically 3 different options available for lifting your Tacoma. The first and kind of entry-level option is to do just a basic leveling kit. And so with that, what you would do is remove your front shock and spring, put in a spacer, and then reinstall the existing shock and spring. In the rear, you would do either a block spacer or an add-a-leaf. That would increase the height back there. That's kind of your simplest option. It's the cheapest. You can get a setup for about 160 bucks. It's going to maintain the stock ride pretty well. It's not really going to do much to improve the off-road capability. And there are people out there that would argue this is a pretty poor setup to go with. But there are a lot of people that are also adamant that these systems are just fine unless you're going to be doing very serious off-roading. And so there's a lot of mixed feedback on that. In general, I found that it was pretty much a 50-50 view on people that either loved them or hated them. The next option available is a setup where you can do either a block spacer or leaf spring, or sorry, add a leaf in the back, and a new shock that's a little bit longer. And then in the front, you do the same thing where you would remove your existing shock and coil spring. You'd put in a new shock and reinstall the coil spring on that. With that setup, it's kind of the next level up. It's not an ideal solution because you're reusing basically a smaller coil spring than what you would probably ideally have. but it does save some money, and it's a pretty good next step up. With that setup, what I found is you're basically looking at, for an entry-level system, $360 to get the replacement springs, or sorry, shocks and other components. But you've got to go into a shop or do this yourself. It can be a little dangerous, removing the coil spring from the shock in the front, and compressing it again to install the new one. So it's not something that you typically would want to do yourself unless you're experienced mechanically, but that would add a little bit of cost for someone that's a novice like myself to do that replacement. And so what I basically found is it'd probably be about $500 to do that type of a setup. The next option that's available, which is kind of your ideal solution, it's going to improve the off-road capability and really be the best setup, is to do a full replacement of your shocks and springs. With that setup, you're probably looking at about $850 to $900 for an entry-level system. With that, you would not need to do a compression of the coil spring because it would come pre-assembled, and you know, that's ultimately kind of going to be your best setup, but you start to see that the cost is increasing quite a bit from that basic leveling kit option. And so what I landed on was a 2-inch spacer in the front. So I'm going to lift up the front of the vehicle just 2 inches. This is a rough country spacer, costs $60. And then on the rear, we've got a Toytech 1-inch spacer that we're going to add. And so what we're ultimately going to end up with there is 2 inches in the front, 1 inch in the back. I think that's going to be a pretty nice way to just kind of increase the height slightly without changing the stock look too much, and you know, doing it within a pretty reasonable budget. The other thing that I really like about going with the 2-1 is there's a lot of 3-1 kits out there that are said to truly level the vehicle. The problem with that is I feel like you end up with a lot of Tacomas out there that sag in the rear. They have the bro lean. I wanted to avoid that as much as possible, and preferred to have a little bit of a rake on the truck with the rear sitting a little higher. Also gives me the opportunity, if I put a little bit of weight in the back, it's not going to cause it to sag in the back. And so I felt like with the 2-1 that it would fix the rake a little bit to where it wasn't quite so significant, while also lifting the truck and not really going too far overboard. I'm really curious and interested to see how this all turns out, what it looks like when I'm all said and done. Plan is to do the installation this weekend, so I'm going to have a video coming up very soon showing the final outcome, and then hopefully also give you some instructions on how the installation goes in case you're interested in doing the same thing to your truck. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comments below. For more videos on the 2016 Tacoma, subscribe to my channel. In the meantime, thanks for watching.